Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we're bringing you day 280 of Russian invasion into Ukraine. With Olexiy Arestovych, advisor to the Office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel, and Mark Feygin, Russian opposition politician. In this stream, they discuss situation on the front. Ukrainian military command published some data about destroyed Russian equipment and personnel in Zaporozhye, Pavlovka, that has been retaken by Ukraine, according to unofficial information, and unsurroundable for the last 10 months of Avdiivka. Also, futile hopes near Bakhmut to surround and capture the town. Shellings of Russian army of Nikolaev, Kherson, Sumy, Chernigov, Nikopol, Zaporozhye, and other regions continue. And the fact that Russian army is fighting for the cause of loss, defining, among others, will post-Putin's Russia be denuclearized or not? Manageability of this conflict. Western allies continue to exert efforts to control the flow of this warfare. President Biden declared that he is ready to use arms to preclude Iran from obtaining nuclear technologies, and United States not ready to acknowledge Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism, but however ready to acknowledge and add Wagner to the list of recognized terrorist organizations. And the destiny of Saakashvili in prison in Georgia, and can Ukraine do anything for their own citizen? Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feigin Live. It is Wednesday, November 30th, and it's 6 minutes past 10 in Kiev, 6 minutes past 11 in Moscow. Apologies for technical delays. There are different considerations in Kiev because the city has issues with electricity and connectivity, so we have to resolve them every time, or most every time, we stream with somebody from that area. Over 6,000 already clicked the like button. Please continue sharing. Glad to see you, Olexiy. Good evening, Mark. Good evening, dear viewers. We love you all. And by the way, now we can love 2,001,000 subscribers that we recently broke the 2 million barrier. I thank everybody who subscribed to Feigin Live. This is crucial. Of course, our goals are not champion results among the different streamers on YouTube, but it is an important factor for how much the stream is shared, how much is it distributed. So those who have not subscribed yet, please continue doing so, and please subscribe if you haven't done that yet. If you can, just click that button. That definitely helps us. And of course, subscribe to Alexei's channel. The link to his channel is in the description, and if you are listening or watching that in English language, please do not forget to subscribe to Privateer Station as well. Okay, Olexiy, we have 150,000 viewers already online with us. Let's start with the situation on the front and bring up the map. Oh Lord, give me power. Okay, let's go over the map. In Kherson region, everything is the same. Artillery duels across the right bank. Our response is more effective than theirs because we have longer range artillery in that direction, and we can also guide some of our munitions, and we have HIMARS supporting the action. So there are some very big and juicy hits on the Russian troops on that side of Kherson. General Command acknowledged, I did not want to bring it up, but General Command made a post that near Takmak, you can see those two green baggies near 7 o'clock of this map. They had losses of about 500 troops and about 50 to 70 units of equipment. So the groups of people who were being staged there for ungodly reasons are now dispersed. So why do you think they were gathering there? Why they were aggregating? Well, you know, they've been preparing somewhere deeper away from the front to probably go towards Gulaypole. And there is also another location nearby where another group of those who were going to attack Gulaypole appear to, and will not do so now. So there is some motion in Zaporozhye on both sides. So far, just the local tactical fights, nothing major. Near Ugledar and Pavlovka, evil Russian commentators, I highlight not Ukrainian, are already screaming that Ukrainian troops have taken Pavlovka back, and they only have a little bit of Russian troops on the outskirts of that settlement, and that's kind of not good on their image, because they've been screaming about it for several days, that that's an achievement, and now it is not theirs anymore. So we have not affirmed, our official position did not comment on that, but that's what they're discussing now. Near Marinka, that's in the middle of this map at 3 o'clock, they're trying to push, and we are holding them. Near Avdiivka, you can see that protrusion, also now at 3, as we scroll the map. They're trying to surround that Avdiivka, and by the way, they are trying to surround it. It's been already 10 months since they've been attempting these maneuvers, and they keep failing. So we'll see. I'm very skeptical about their capabilities and goals and capabilities to realize these goals that they've set for themselves. Let's go to Bakhmut. Their fight for Kurdyumovka nearby, the ones that they announced that they've taken. Then there are other people coming out on the Russian side and saying, no, we have not done that yet, so it's too early to announce that. But what they're currently happy about is that you see that there's protrusion at 7 o'clock from the Russian side to the Ukrainian side. That's what they achieved. There is a little bit of motion on the south, and they're playing the same move, trying to maybe get to the faraway road and cut Bakhmut, but I suspect they're about to find a very big disappointment of their life, and probably the last disappointment for many of the troops in that area. If we go to Solidar, a little bit to the north of Bakhmut, same thing, nothing happens there. Bilogorovka, they continue trying to occupy it again, nothing really works. And the hotline between Svatova and Kremenaya, from that red border, that red outline at the bottom, that's where Kremenaya is, and Svatova is at the junction of orange roads, in about 10 o'clock towards the middle of the map. They're trying to push us back from the positions that we occupied earlier, and since there's no major maneuvers, we cannot qualify it, but in any capacity other than the local tactical infighting. So that's about it. That's the situation on the front. That's it, right? Yeah, generally that's it. Okay, so there are some news continuing the context of NATO meeting at Bucharest. Interesting statements, for example, Germany Chancellor Olaf Scholz stated that Russia cannot win the war, this war on the battlefront. Then the question is, if you're making these statements, we understand it's political. The next question is, why are they fighting, right? Well, they're fighting for the cost of their defeat. The cost can be higher or lower. I think everybody already, even Putin already realized that he lost. And regardless of super efforts that they may undertake, they will not be able to change the flow. So it's more about the conclusion of this war and what can they trade for. There are no buyers on the Ukrainian side, right? No, there are no buyers, and we are waiting till the price goes in the area of capitulation. And sometimes it is conditional capitulation, sometimes it is unconditional capitulation. So we'll see what happens. And of course, reparations and all those usual 4 articles we talked about, giving out the military criminals. And my position is also straightforward. Russia should be denuclearized. The world needs to take away nuclear weapons from Russia, because they are a huge risk and a huge break on the pathway to further development of humanity. So they're fighting to preclude these evil plans of Olexiy Arestovych. We can say it like that. Okay, we have about 250,000 watching us live, and about 50K of you click the like button. So it is important for us to get more viewership from Ukraine. In many places, they do not have electricity and internet, so at least they can watch a recorded show later. And same thing, if you are watching that in English, it is utmost important to continue sharing and promoting that stream. We have other dragons to slay on the English-speaking front for that media war. So, another news, United States refuses to support longest range arms, avoiding further escalation of this conflict. Similar approach, we kind of discussed it before and many times, but I'll continue explaining that until people get it, because that's my holy duty here. So, once again, Lend-Lease and other support. Once again, Strategic Management School in the West is the school of strategic planning. Strategic plans that are outlined with concrete goals and plans to achieve them, they get monetary support, they get funded. Strategic goals, America does not have strategic goals in this war, and NATO do not have that either. This is the main and major tragedy of the West in regards to this Russian invasion into Ukraine. They don't know yet, they have not come to a conclusion what does post-Putin, Putin's regime in Russia world will look like. And they don't quite know how to manage that world. And accordingly, they don't know if they do want to achieve that world. Post-Putin, they kind of generally imagine. Post-Russian, they do not. And they're rather afraid that when the world becomes post-Putin, it might quickly crumble into the post-Russian world, into a situation with maybe a civil war in Russia, where different Kadyrovs are fighting for nuclear arsenals of ex-Russia, ex-USSR. They do not like when millions of refugees fleeing the country, fleeing the territory. They're not ready for that scenario, so many of their serious strategic decisions are not being taken in lieu of that. And their major strategy right now is generally follows the principle of do not escalate, do not make it worse. This conflict flows according to the certain framework. It rolls in a way that leaves them time to make decisions, and in return they're trying to continue helping this conflict to flow in a certain way, because right now they have some capacity to manage it, some capacity to control it. So basically, do not touch it if it's not broken. The West does not have a figure similar to Reagan or Thatcher who would go against the advice of experts, advice of traditions, who can override that and just follow a different strategy in this thing. United States had no strategy how to overcome USSR until Reagan showed up and said USSR is an evil empire and they need to fail. They had a ton of experts and institutions doing the research who were talking that Soviet Union will stay up and strong until at least 2020. I was talking to a ton of correspondents, journalists, representatives of deep state and all. They all are talking the same tune. Olexiy, you are romanticizing the possibilities and outcomes of this war. You and Feygin are romanticizing. Life is more difficult than that. We cannot talk about denuclearization, and we need to follow the certain steps. To which I always remind them, historical fact, a month and a half before the USSR collapse, CIA, despite all the crisis happening in the Soviet Union, created a document that basically was signed by all their best experts. Everybody supported that, where it was written out that USSR will continue at least to the 20th of 2020. In a month and a half, the USSR collapsed. So there is big politics, and then that's how usually all these advisors work. If you want to understand why your ideas will not work, ask the experts. They will tell you why they will not work. So usually there is a motor, an engine behind anything grand, any grand achievement. A person who stands up and says, I respect your opinion, but I'm going to go another way. And I'll pull us by the skin of the teeth. And this is how the big achievements are created. Post-Russian or post-Russian nuclear world is the world that needs a figure similar to Churchill, to Roosevelt on the West, to Reagan or Thatcher. Somebody who, despite a huge group of very respectable people, and the paradox is many of them are pretty smart, with a lot of experience, with their whole life being a proof to what can be done, what cannot be done, and they represent the aggregate body of experts with a very heavy opinion. One would need a madman who would avoid all falling in line with them and would say, no, I will go that way, and have an iron hand to continue pushing it further, to make people believe, to inspire them, to let other romanticizing figures who've been trampled upon before to rise their heads again and join him in this effort. And only people like that can set goals of that caliber and achieve them. Right now, the West does not have figures like that, so we have to deal with the standard, careful politics. But the good news is that this politics is already much braver than what I could expect looking at the West a year and a half before this big war. Because what I've seen in the Norman format during the negotiations between Russia and us and the West being present, that debased any belief I had in the West. Their basic representatives of the West, their only opinion was at that time for Ukraine to take off our colorful national shirt and watch the anteroom in Kremlin. And they do like our culture, they do like our democracy, but they totally did not want to go against Putin. And it took Zelensky, who was that brave, to say no. So we are lucky we have a madman like that. And then the whole Ukrainian people finally joined him. And when the whole world almost lit the candles and burials for us, we rose up and said, no, that's what you get. And we have not been a force because we've been squabbling around, but we finally are out of that story. We are now united and we are going for our goals. And those people who are trying to squabble us from within, they're being attacked internally from all sides, telling, hey, no, we do not do any infighting until we win in this war. And I should remind the skeptics that our Air Force was given 3 hours to die at the beginning of this war. And I continue to be amazed by their results. They're still very much alive and kicking. And also today is radio electronic defense and Intel branch of military. It's their professional holiday. If not for them, we would have a lot more missiles hitting the target in Ukraine, being shot from Russia. So these guys are the ones who are helping us to stay, to keep power, to keep heat, to keep our military safer than they would have been otherwise. So I have to congratulate a lot of those officers who serve in radio electronic troops. By the way, there are a lot of women serving in those, so a lot of specialists. Big thank you to you all. Returning back to that topic, I was very disappointed at the West at the beginning of war, but they're showing miracles of transformation. Germany, Italy, France, amazing transformations. The most open changes are happening in Germany. Let's take a figure of Walter Steinmeier. It was his formula to take off our national shirt and wash the floors in Kremlin. This is the man who was appealing to us from 14 to 22 to sign peace deal, and this is the only way for you out. Minsk 1 and 2 were not the real peace deals, you need the third one. Today, he is saying we understand. Peace talks with Putin's Russia do not work. It will only be used as a pause to accumulate more forces and to continue their aggression. So these are dramatic changes happening with leadership in Europe. So overall, despite the lack of grand figures, the West overall advances rather well and much better than I could have expected, and that I expected even on the 23rd, 24th, 26th of February of this year, until 28th. On 28th, we started breaking the flow of the front, but I remember those early streams, I do. Okay, we have over 300,000 watching us live now. Biden made a statement that he is ready to use, if he has to, military measures to preclude Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. This is translated by the Department of States of the United States, because we do now understand how Tehran can get nuclear weapons right now, right? Because somebody would need to transfer that technology to Iran, and who could that be, right? Well, given the fact that Iranian missiles are still not on the front, and new drones are still not on the front, and they're for real not there yet. Not yet so far, at least. I think Iran got talked to and was explained what they'll have to face if these munitions reach the Ukrainian front. So I suspect they did not quite like that explanation. So you think that story with Iran is slowly closing for Moscow? I do not have exact data. It may open again. I know that there is a trade, there is negotiation happening in the back. I can see that Iranian missiles are not being used, and Shahed's drones are not flying in hundreds or not even in dozens daily. So if the West managed to do that, and if they succeeded in that negotiation, big thanks to them for that. I'm not even talking about amazing decision that was recently voiced about taking Ukraine into NATO and European Union after this war. So that'll be a destiny-changing moment for the world, by the way. You know, in the 17th century, after Bogdan Khmelnytsky uprising in Ukraine, and Europe made a big mistake after that. They let Ukraine to gravitate toward Moscow, and the whole story or history of the world went along the wrong track. Now there is another fork like that in the road. If Europe takes us, in a good sense of this world, into their group, the future history of the world will continue in a different light. So even without Thatcher and Reagan, there is a collective Reagan and Thatcher, so to say. If not Reagan, then maybe Adenauer, who is making very reasonable decisions. And by the way, Adenauer is not bad. It was a rather good figure, Olexiy. Okay, so we've been about 22 minutes live. Here is a batch of other interesting news. United States does not think that acknowledging Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism would help Ukraine. This would actually tie hands of international community, but private mercenary company Wagner can be recognized as a terrorist group. This is not a fully made decision yet, but Bloomberg already announced that that is being discussed. And I found a French source, I posted in my media, that in Africa, in Central African Republic, on 27th of November, an unknown plane bombed the base of Wagner and Nasangoa, according to the representatives of that country. And reportedly there are some dead Wagner troops, so unknown jet. I suspect it's probably a French jet in this case, and they decided they are not going around Wagner on tiptoes anymore. So do you think this is some sort of an exchange? We cannot acknowledge Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism, and we don't want the secondary sanctions to hurt India and China, that usual set that we discussed. But Wagner, for example, could be easily considered a terrorist group, because it seems like there is a definite wave of different attacks on them. And there is another news coming from Moscow. that announced they'll be aggregating another private mercenary company without Prigozhin. That is still questionable info, but it starts to show on different media. And tomorrow I'll have a stream about that other character who recently talked about Prigozhin's past in prison. I'll have a reliable source whom Prigozhin almost put in prison, one of the deputies of St. Petersburg. So, after all their crimes in Syria, Iran, and other places, yeah, exactly. They do not want to cause additional confrontation with China and India. The United States do not need that, so they do not need to acknowledge Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. But look, European Union and Parliament Assembly of NATO countries also acknowledged Russia to be a state sponsor of terrorism. And by the way, United States is a NATO member. So they're putting red flags. They're not doing it directly. They're probably leaving some space for maneuver, or at least for manageability of this conflict. But they're putting flags around it, and they're narrowing the scope. This is a very American strategy that gives additional option for Putin's regime to change their mind and also keep the situation in somewhat controllable. And speaking of Wagner, yeah, they already a sore thumb for many peoples. They're not only in the Ukraine here, they're also in Africa, in Mali, in Central Africa. So probably right now it's the scale of the force of Wagner and Prigozhin's dreams about taking government federal positions in Russia. By the way, French were in Mali in there for a long time. So when Wagner came in and gave them severe issues with the rebels, they were created by Wagner troops. So French decided to withdraw. They, in essence, have lost their faith and authority and suffered a military defeat. And it's not that French army cannot win against Wagner. They can. They just decided it's not worthy to suffer longer losses or more losses than they had. They don't want to get dragged into another partisan war, and they have members of Indochina and alike. And they basically displayed a weakness of will. And Wagner filled that vacuum. And now a simple guy from Kolyma who is a driver, and who used to be a driver, who came over to fight on the Ukrainian side, and is showing that this Wagner is not too scary, that they can be destroyed very successfully, and they don't even have time to bury their Wagner troops near Bakhmut. The dogs are taking them apart. So Frenchmen probably became a little ashamed of what they've done, and that they can maybe hit Wagner more effectively, and it's not as scary as some people think of it. And if French were a little more flexible, they could have offered special conditions for Ukraine to get 3 Ukrainian brigades. Imagine, we have 1.2 million veterans after this war, and 3 brigades is only thousands. So you can imagine the quality of fighters you can get there. There'll be only memories of Wagner in that territory. So that could be an interesting cooperation between Ukrainian and French military at the end of the war, and operation to stabilize peace and situation in the Central African region. And then after that, you can have diplomats, businessmen, and humanitarian missions entering there. Who would preclude you from doing that? So, interesting possibilities. You never know. That may be an interesting eventuality after this war. And I don't know what could have happened there. They have killed some important French asset on the territory or what, because this is not even an operation. This is not a military goal operation. This is sort of a revenge signal. So perhaps they've done something wrong there again, and France decided to say no. Otherwise, yeah. So people are joking in the chat saying, yeah, it'll be Mali people who will kick Wagner out, and they'll be singing French and Ukrainian songs, right? Okay, we're approaching 30 minutes. Please subscribe, do not forget that. Medvedev appeared again on the stage, doing more acrobatic maneuvers. And Euro Commission acknowledged that they deleted an information about 100,000 killed on the Ukrainian side since the beginning of war. They commented that this was an error that crawled into the report, and that was a number that was supposed to cover all summary losses, both dead and wounded, to outline the negative effects of Russian operation on civilians and Ukraine military. So we did hear from Zaluzhny some numbers about the losses of Ukraine in this war. So let's go in orderly fashion. Exact losses are secret information. You cannot publish them because it gives our foes strategically important information about the effectivity of their weapons and allows them to make certain decisions based on that. But there are some ballpark numbers being voiced by President and by Zaluzhny, and there is a serious ask in the community to know some numbers by people who care and worry about Ukraine. And President of the European Union requested that information too, and we have to react. That's why that information was given. I have say unofficially here. I already said something to that effect in Latinina interview today, but I can repeat that with you as well. Our losses are somewhere between 10 and 20,000 people dead, killed in this war. No, and we just want to understand the magnitude. Okay, the magnitude is between 10 and 20. So this was just a misspoke by the European leader. When you talk a lot, she just misspoke. She said killed in action. This is not what it is. The killed in action figure is between 10 and 20. And this is not just Ukraine military, that also includes territorial defense. Ukraine, however, has high sanitary losses. So what are they? This is the situation when a serviceman left the detachment for longer than a day due to some illness. And if he comes back 2 days later, he's back. He's back in fighting. We, for now, have a number of 96% of wounded and sick being returned back to the war theater after rehabilitation. In Russian numbers, it is 1 to 1 or 1 to 2 at best, and for the most part is due to the horrific medical support system they have, and the time terms of wounded being delivered, transported to medical establishments of the higher level. They're unsatisfactory, and also medical preparations of corpsmen and medics at the front and their supply lines. They just don't have supplies. They don't have medical stuff. One of the biggest trophies they get is Ukrainian medical kits, because there are a lot of videos and pictures of Russian medical kits. It's about nothing. So let's look at the military losses. How are they defined? There are complete losses, the ones that died and got killed on the front, never achieved medical establishment, just got lost or died during the front. Then there are sanitary losses, the ones that had to leave the battlefront for more than a day, if it took over a day for the person to recover. According to the equipment and armaments, they also can be outlined as returnable and complete ones. The ones that are repairable and the ones that are total loss. In NATO, there is a little different. So the one who is completely lost includes everything among the troops, the ones who got captured, lost, disappeared from the front in a different way. So they counted differently. And the battle losses are the ones which died immediately during the battle engagement on the front. So we have a lot of wounded. We have a lot of people who fall sick, and we bring them back. A lot of wounded who we treat and bring back. So in our case, it's about 1 to 7, maybe, and in their case, it's about a 1 to 1. So they actually have lost about 100,000 troops, and they have about 100,000 wounded. And they're very poor statistics of returning them to front because most of them are severely wounded. And in our case, I can agree, maybe a total number could be about 80,000, but because it includes sanitary losses. And in Russian side, it would be about 80 to 100,000 killed. Let's say 80 just cadre and mobilized, who are considered to be part of active Russian army, discounting newly mobilized and discounting Wagners, who are also dying in tens of thousands. And a lot of wounded and disabled who will never be able to come back, about the same number as killed. So that's roughly the picture. We've been live for about 35 minutes, so we have a little bit more time left. Important question that we need to address. Look, NATO and the allies provide help for about $40 billion to Ukraine so far and will continue helping. That's what Blinken stated in his speech recently. So speaking of that structure of help, of that aid coming from the West, is it going through some evolution of nomenclature? We already talked about items they do not send, but just other nomenclature that is being sent by certain decisions made by President of the United States, Congress, and other acts. Are we talking about help or supplies? What are we talking about? So supplies would be technical, first of all, and armaments and munitions and repairs. So I think 40 billion is the aggregate number that includes everything. So it's not direct military aid, and by the way, that also includes the cost of delivering, the cost of transportation, the cost of training, the cost of repairs. So 40 billions in the context of what Russia is spending on this war, this is a much smaller number. Well, yeah. Let's play a different game here. How much did Greece get during the crisis of 2008? 200 billion. Just like that. Didn't even notice. And no, they did not even have a question posed about survival of Greeks as nation. Nobody was destroying their energy system. And Ukraine in this war got anywhere between 40 to 60 billion. Do you think it's difficult for the West to give us 400 with the letter B? Well, if they strain a little, they maybe could have. Mark, they probably wouldn't even have to strain much. They have quite a bit of money, or their equivalent in kind of credits. And most of that money would be turned within the West itself because it will be spent on Western companies who are providing services to Ukraine. It's essentially the Afghanistan scheme where they've been spending $2 billion a day for 20 years. And by the way, most of that money were going to the Western citizens, to the Western businesses, to the army support. So the cleaning lady in the base of Bagram was getting, I think, about 8,000 monthly. So for some reason, no. And for some reason, Ukraine is not getting that. And the war is being managed, so let it go, let it flow the way it is. And that's all the support they're going to give. They're not bad. The West is not bad. People sometimes think the West is horrible, why don't they intervene, assassinate Putin, they have money. No, the West is more at a loss. They do not have a bigger framework, bigger picture to what they're leading that conflict to. And when they finally define that, then everything will follow rather quickly. Everything will follow suit. Churchill had a good quote about Americans, I'll quote him here, that Americans will make the right decision one day after they've tried everything else. So right now we're in a stage of trying everything else. Okay, okay. Last question. We are approaching 40 minutes. Oh, Britain, by the way, I'm getting a note here, got 30 billion for Brexit, or gave 30 billion. Yeah, right? Well, that's internally. So, and the whole collective West helping the nation that is fighting for its physical survival, not even for the loss in this war, and is actually guarding Europe from Putin's regime and solving one of the main tasks of European politics at the moment, who guarding from Putin's regime that put NATO and the West, collective West, as the enemy on a pedestal. The country that is doing all that got 60 billion tops. No other questions. So let's see how it will unfold. We hope that the situation will change, but to the best, to the better. Okay, we're at 350,000. Last topic we promised to talk about today. In a wider sense of things, it's behavior of allies among the countries that are facing territorial issues, Moldova and Georgia in particular. And I gave several interviews to the journalists in Georgia about, we were talking about the destiny of Saakashvili. He is an ex-president of Georgia, he's a citizen of Ukraine. Now he came at his own volition to Georgia for the local elections. And basically, there are news coming up saying that he was poisoned. He's not confirming that officially, but he is pretty bad. He's not feeling well. He's not a spring chicken. He's 56. But again, definitely right now in his physical state, being in prison is not a good thing for him. And what I'm being told is Ivanishvili, their current leader, is being afraid of Moscow, so they cannot let Saakashvili go. And at least I think the court proceedings already started against him, because that was the reason for his arrest. People are asking Georgian leadership to let him go under maybe house arrest, or they can maybe even let him go outside of the country. Do you think President Zelensky can apply some force? Sorry, yeah, I get a correction that in Brexit it was 43 billion euros that was the retribution paid. The rest of the losses were not direct losses, they were calculated economic losses. So, going back to Saakashvili, it would have been better if President Saakashvili was maybe in Ukraine, according to his current citizenship, and he could have brought additional help to Ukraine in fighting this war. What can we talk about here? Mark, this is a very serious dilemma. He is also a citizen of Georgia, right? He is also an ex-president of Georgia. I don't know. For example, Ukraine does not recognize any other citizenship. If a person has Ukrainian citizenship, we don't care if he has any other, and we treat the person as Ukrainian citizen. I don't know if Georgia follows the same suit. But from the point of view of Georgian law, he made several violations during his rule, and he is being suspected in corruption in some forced decisions, and also on the political side, they just are being afraid. The current leadership of Georgia are being afraid of him. They consider him a political enemy. And given the current state of consciousness of Georgian leaders who managed, as I mentioned in my conversation with Romanenko, that the task of Ukraine in the future is to protect Georgia from Russian attacks. Georgian leaderships, the leader of the party, the leader of the cabinet of ministers, they decided to read my statement as Ukraine wants to annex Georgia. So if people are in such a confused state of mind, I understand it happens, then there's a different question to ask. What do you think they think about Mikhail Saakashvili? He's bright. He's a very large-scale personality. You can criticize him, and there are a lot of things to criticize him for, but you can also admire him for about the same number of reasons. And then the question would be, what do you do with him? He could definitely be a weight on any scale to change situation. He came there at his own volition to Georgia for the elections. So to do what? They probably will be afraid to kill him. They will not want to give him up. They'll be afraid of that, maybe Moscow regime. And then we'll probably just let him slowly fade in prison. And then they'll probably rely on the usual, well, he is old, his health is fading, we didn't do anything. It will be difficult to prove that he was poisoned. It will be difficult to prove that they mistreated him. They would be saying that he had doctor visiting him twice a day, etc. And here are documents about his treatment. So it is a similar situation, very symmetrical to the West, not knowing what to do with this war. So they're just riding this road without really considering. I don't think he's being consciously assassinated or killed in prison, but I see there are a lot of politicians in the world who are not capable of making serious decisions, with the exception of very few of them. So, they don't know what to do with him. Keep him is bad, let him go is worse. So, in the meantime, incarceration has never added any health to anyone. So he needs to recover, and all those ailments he had been diagnosed with. He needs to get better, and he needs to get some treatment. So even with them not really supporting him in a proper way, it makes things difficult for him. So his destiny is tragic. For now, it is definitely tragic. I don't know how much Ukraine can influence that. It is a very difficult question. President Zelensky, in your opinion, can intervene? Can he do anything about it? That's a decision of a president. I cannot comment that. I do not have full information that he has, because one of the main things is that in order to be able to judge him and to say how right and how correct he is, you need to have the same information as he has, and it's difficult to address that. I don't have 100th of all the plethora of knowledge that he has, that he's being informed about the international situation, about Mikhail Saakashvili himself, about the Georgian government and tendencies, and everything else that is related to that issue. I can say for myself what I would do. I would definitely intervene. I would definitely offer an option with the level of information that I have. Maybe I'm wrong. If I had a similar set of data that our president has, I would have offered something else, or maybe we would go by some more cunning way to take him out of Georgia. I would suggest to transfer him to the third country, some intermediary like Austria, provide proper medical treatment with medical supervision, and maybe keep him on the hospital arrest or maybe house arrest. I don't think it's doable in Austria. Or maybe just, settle him at standalone villa someplace in a guarded condition. Something that would allow Georgian justice representatives to continue their investigation, but would also keep his health and to preclude any speculations that Georgian government had made an effort to kill him. So something like that. For example, you don't want all of Europe and the international community talking about Georgia, that you guys killed Saakashvili in prison. You don't want that, then of course, let's figure something out. Let's take him out of prison, put him in some high visibility location, and provide him with proper medical treatment. I don't know, International Protectorate of United States Nations, or some Hague something jurisdiction. And all you need really is a full-scale treatment with access for judicial system to continue their investigation. Then this way nobody can say that you killed him on purpose. So this is one of the decisions. This is one of the pathways in this case. All right, what can I say here? We hope that Georgian authorities. Personally, I do feel for him. I know him personally. He at least personally, what he wrote to me, he really highly valued what I was doing, and he was treating my work with high regard. So I also, although I do have a lot of some critique of his actions while he was president, I could still say a lot of words about warm words about him as a character. I sympathize with him. I'm on his side, and I would definitely wish for that eventuality to come true, because that would be better for both him and for Georgian leadership. Because if anything happens to him in prison, if he happens to die there, let's be blunt, they would never be able to wash that blood off their hands. That they, regardless of the proof that they provide, they'll never be able to wash their name and wash their hands from that. They don't need that. They cannot clean that ever. So the best thing they can do is transfer him to a third party, or maybe create conditions on the territory of Georgia where International Commission of Doctors can be taking care of his health and can guarantee the proper protocol and guarantee that he was not poisoned, that he was given proper medical treatment. If you do not want to give him out to third parties, you can create that condition in Georgia. Otherwise, it's a very bad path and a direct eventuality of not being capable of making a proper decision, because they'll try to rely on usual bureaucracy. He was just a convict, and he was treated as usual convicts, but he cannot be. This is a formal descriptor. There are informal ones, right? He is also a figure of a much higher caliber. He is a politician who played a big role in Georgian history. So imagine the effect of it if anything happens to him. Imagine the internal risks they're creating by doing nothing. So if they were people with good consciousness and good reason, he would have been in much better conditions under supervision, and doctors would be taking care of him with all the judicial proceedings going on if they want to. And I will add it here for myself. I think we already went past that milestone, and I think there is a capability in Georgia. There are actually a couple of things that allow them to free him and to let him go, and I would appeal to the powers of Georgia to let him go. Well, Mark, this is a very wise decision. I was trying to find something acceptable, but I would just appeal to the powers to just let him go. He'd spent enough time in prison, and just stop all that spectacle. Well, I'm not even relying on leadership to be that brave or that decisive, but at least, we'll see how the West reacts to the situation. We'll see how Georgian authorities will do. There'll be nothing good. Nothing good will come out if he will be indeed sentenced to a real term in prison. So Georgian authorities still have time, still have an opportunity to stop it and let him go. We've been for the whole 51 minutes live today. Tomorrow is Thursday. We're doing everything the usual. Okay. Yes. So whatever we didn't finish talking about today, we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you for 2 million subscribers. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for coming to us as usual, Olexiy. Mark, that's a good milestone. 2 million in a Russian segment of internet. That's a good milestone. Let's live till we see maybe 4. We'll see how it goes. Don't forget to subscribe to Olexiy Arestovich and to the Privateer Station if you enjoy listening to these conversations in English. Thank you so much, and see you tomorrow. Good luck.